Amnesia. Is it still worth playing? Amnesia: The Dark Descent is a survival horror adventure video game by Frictional Games. Released in 2010 for Microsoft Windows, Mac OS X, and Linux operating systems, in 2016 for the PlayStation 4 platform, and in 2018 for the Xbox. The game features a protagonist named Daniel exploring a dark and foreboding castle called Brennenburg, while trying to maintain his sanity by avoiding monsters and unsettling events. The game was critically well received, earning 2 awards from the Independent Games Festival and numerous positive reviews, or at least, that's what Wikipedia says.
Is that copyright infringement?
So I've recently finished playing Amnesia: The Dark Descent for the very first time. Links to the gameplay in the description.
Shameless plug.
In this video, we will discuss what the game is about, the plot, what I thought about it, and whether it's still worth playing in this day and age. The game opens with you, a character named Daniel, walking with difficulty in a first-person POV through an impressively built and ominously creepy castle. Although the graphics are of tater-tot quality, but hey, that means your shitty PC can actually run the game, am I right? Am I right? No? The character is repeating his own name to himself, as if to remind himself who he is. Who knows? Maybe he has amnesia. I'll see myself out. This is handy for you, the player, since it will drill the character's name into your head. So now you know who you are. Daniel. When the cutscene finally ends and you have control over the character, the game officially begins. You can move around with the WASD keys and move the camera with your mouse. You can jump with the spacebar and crouch with control. Standard stuff, you know? By the way, if you're not gaming on PC, then get the fuck out of here! Just kidding, I need the watch time. Like and subscribe now. You can always change your mind later. You start off by finding yourself close to a door so you can learn the mechanics of the game. When you get close enough to a door, a hand will appear. Left click on your mouse and either pull towards you or push, and the door will open. This game has a lot of realistic elements like that, you know? You pick up a tinderbox, you learn to light a candle, and things seem to be on the up and up. The more tinderboxes you have, the more candles and torches you can light. If you run out of tinderboxes, well... On the ground, you notice a trail of pink jizz. To be honest, I still don't know what that is supposed to be. I guess I wasn't paying attention, but I'm guessing it's blood. So you follow the trail. This is when the creepy sounds begin and Daniel starts to freak out a bit, you see. But the only way out is through, and so onwards you go. As you enter a new part of the castle, a door opens up on its own. Was it a draft? A ghost? A monster? Who knows? This is your first jump scare in the game. You are now initiated into the wonderful world of Amnesia. Congratulations! You keep following the trail and opening doors as you go, not knowing if there will be something behind said door, which is where most of the suspense and tension of the game lies. Brilliant. Somehow you hear the sound of wood creaking. Even though the castle is made of stone, but hey, this isn't the same universe as ours, so if the game developers want their stone walls to creak like wood, then goddammit, it will creak like wood. As you follow the hallway, some more creepy sounds appear. Your vision turns blurry, and Daniel seems to be having a full-on panic attack. But can you blame him? I would have just hid in a room and died of starvation if I were him, to be honest. You enter a large chamber with many adjacent rooms. This is where you learn about sanity. You see, standing in the light is all fine and dandy. However, the longer you stand in the darkness, the more Daniel will go insane. This is visualized by your vision going blurry. But fear not, my friend. This can be remedied by standing in the light. So you just have to find your nearest lit candle, or light the nearest unlit candle or torch, stand next to it, and voila! Your sanity is restored. If you ever find yourself not knowing what to do, just press J, click on mementos, and it will tell you the objectives you have laid out for yourself. Next, you discover a new type of door, one that cannot be opened in the regular manner, but rather one that seems to take you to an entirely different part of the castle, as there's a cutscene in between entering this door and finding yourself on the other side of it. In this place, you discover some more rooms and hallways, but the most important thing here is that you find a lantern. Unlike torches and candles, which you cannot take with you, you can take the lantern with you, which is great since you will never have to worry about light again, right? Right? Well, no. Just like you can run out of tinderboxes, you can run out of lamp oil. When this happens, your lamp will be rendered useless, and you will find yourself in the darkness losing sanity by the second. And so the game teaches you to be strategic with both your tinderboxes and lamp oil. Ideally, you explore a dark room with your lamp in order to not lose sanity. Then if you find a candle in there or a torch, you will light that instead and save your lamp oil for the next time you need it. Now here's something you should skip to the timestamp for if you're planning on playing the game. Hell, if you're not sure whether or not you're gonna play the game, skip to the timestamp. So here it is. Losing sanity in the game doesn't affect much other than your vision. That's right, losing sanity does not make monsters appear more frequently. It doesn't kill you. You do start to hyperventilate, which if the monster hears you, it will find you and kill you. You might start to get a lag between when you move the mouse and when you actually move in game, but all in all, it doesn't do much. But for the player who doesn't know that, your own psychology starts to work against you without you even knowing. As you explore the castle of Brennenburg, you will start to have flashbacks and find letters that will aid you in learning more about the place you find yourself in and more about your own past. The very first letter you find is a letter from past Daniel. This letter informs you that Daniel actually chose to forget what he knew. You will find out later that this was achieved through an amnesia potion. It also lets you know that Daniel is being followed by a shadow, which is a living thing, represented through the fleshy mess you see on the screen right now. It cannot be stopped. It will continue to follow you until the very end of the game. The only thing you can do is escape it. Other than that, past Daniel wants you to find a mysterious man named Alexander in the inner sanctum and kill him. For whatever reason, Daniel absolutely despises Alexander, and by means of more letters and flashbacks you will learn why. So how did Daniel actually get here? Well, Daniel started this chain of events while on an expedition to North Africa and Algeria. He went there with Professor Herbert. They found an ancient tomb in the South Algerian Sahara known as the Tin Hinan tomb beneath the dunes of the desert. While exploring the stone structure, Daniel found himself trapped inside alone. In the darkness appeared a faint blue shimmer. With all his strength, Daniel crawls to the light in the darkness and touches it. What follows are DMT-level hallucinations of geometric patterns and castles and deserts and all sorts of memories from past lives or perhaps even other people's memories. The next thing he knows, Daniel is being rescued by the Arab excavators who were working on getting him out of there the moment he got trapped. In his hands were broken pieces of the light he saw in the tomb. Daniel was in such a bad shape that Professor Herbert insisted he return to England so as not to jeopardize the mission of the expedition, and Daniel complied. After returning to England, Daniel spends his time trying to put back together the pieces of what he remembers to be an orb. Although to no avail. No matter the configuration he tries, the pieces will not coalesce together and form the original orb. The pieces change their color, their shape, even their texture, almost as if it were alive. A few weeks later, Daniel receives word that Professor Herbert and his team were attacked. When the only survivor leads the authorities to the campsite, no trace of the professor or his crew were anywhere to be found. Daniel was lucky enough to be able to retrieve some of the belonging of Professor Herbert's and learns more about the expedition and the day Daniel was trapped. Although he thought he was in there for only a few minutes, it turns out that he was in there for about an hour. This surprises him since he started having trouble breathing just a few minutes in. After about a week of trying to reassemble the orb, Daniel finally succeeds in doing so. He was so enamored with the orb, he started researching orbs everywhere they were mentioned in different cultural traditions and histories. While researching the orbs and asking several professors for their expertise, he finds out they die shortly after asking them for help. He sends out letters to varying people from Professor Herbert's address book and received back a few letters, but only one caught his attention, a letter by a Prussian baron named Alexander, who wrote, "I know. I can protect you. Come to Brennenburg Castle." Daniel realizes he is being followed by something. He's being haunted. After all, the deaths of the professors and a certain Dr. Tate, whom he had asked for help, cannot be a coincidence. He calls it the Shadow because it seemingly will never let go of him. Seeing as how Alexander seemed to know the danger Daniel was in, Daniel opts to go to the castle and meet with the Baron himself. Daniel's conscience is eating away at him, as he feels responsible for all the loss of life the Shadow has caused. When he arrives at the castle and meets Alexander, Daniel finds himself in a beautiful building equipped with all the luxury one from the time period can imagine. And the Baron seems to be charming, and as Daniel calls it, well-versed in worldly matters. Alexander tells Daniel that his suspicion is correct. The orb is a dangerous object, supernatural, and having touched it, Daniel is now being haunted by the evil forces that were trapped inside who are trying to reclaim the orb for themselves. The Baron tells Daniel that he can fight back against the otherworldly demons, but it will not be easy, and a certain price will have to be paid. Desperate, Daniel simply lets Alexander take the lead and does as he bids. Now back to the gameplay. As you delve deeper into the castle, you come across your first monster in the cellar archives. And here's the catch: it's invisible. It's called the water monster, and as the name suggests, it exists only in the water and can only hurt you when you are in the water. So in order to avoid it, you must stand on boxes and maneuver your way through by traversing the water as little as possible. Here you also learn about the ability to distract the monster. While out of the water, you can throw something across the room and make a big splash. You will see the monster go investigate the sound, giving you, the player, more breathing room that will allow you to escape this place. Keep in mind, it is impossible to fight back against any monsters in this game. You have to hide and run away from them. Bonus tip: if you are being followed by a monster, closing doors behind you will slow it down. After escaping the water monster, you will find yourself in the back hall, which, in contrast to the cellar, is a quaint and peaceful place to be. Through the back hall, you can explore a guest room, a study, storage, a machine room, and an elevator. For now, the elevator is broken. In the study is where you will get the first glimpse of the true evil hellhole you are in. In a flashback in a specific room, you can hear Alexander torturing a dog. As you look around, you see several torture devices and lots of blood. This is the first turning point in the story where you figure out that perhaps Alexander isn't really as good of a guy as he seemingly was in the beginning. It turns out that the purpose of the torture seems to be the extraction of a certain energy that Alexander needs, or at the very least wants. Through a couple of letters, you find out that there seems to be more of this energy in humans. What can be extracted from animals is simply not enough. Can you tell where this is going? In storage, you get a flashback where you hear a woman begging to go home, only to be mercilessly attacked anyway. In order to get to the machine room, you'll have to find a key which is located in the guest room. You will know this because it is written in the mementos. Anytime you're lost, just read the mementos. After accessing the machine room, you will need to solve a series of puzzles using items you have found thus far from all over the castle in order to get the elevator to work again. I won't spoil how to do this since you're going to play the game, right? You're gonna play the game, right? Right? After fixing the elevator, you descend into the depths of hell. But at least you're getting closer to the inner sanctum, where you will find Alexander and kill him, as past Daniel asked you to do in the very first letter. The elevator will take you down for a while and then crash at the bottom, so there's no turning back at this point. You also get a flashback to when Alexander took you down here for the first time. In it, he tells you that one of the responsibilities of a baron is to house prisoners. Now, whatever this place is called, here is where monster appearances really start to kick in. And this monster is not invisible. Oh no. This ugly bastard you see on the screen right now has got a mouth so vile, even Loken Ball's fiancé wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. He's not terribly bright and can actually miss you completely, even if you're hiding in the same room that he's in, provided that you don't make a noise or show yourself. In this part of the castle, it feels like no matter where you go or what you do, monsters are bound to show up. But by this point, you're already used to the game's mechanics, and you can figure out what to do on your own by checking the mementos every once in a while. So really, the game developers chose the perfect time to start scaring the ever-living crap out of you. This place is probably best described as a labyrinth of sorts. Maybe it's just me, but I found myself getting lost over and over again in this place, taking the same turn every time thinking I just found a new place. It was kind of frustrating, but I felt like that would be the case in reality if I were there, so points for realism. After picking up a few items, namely a hammer and a chisel, you walk into a tunnel and exit to another labyrinth of sorts. Here you will find more monsters and more doors. The aim here is to get out of one of the metal gates. You have to find the one with the rusty old padlock. You can find out the condition of the padlock by trying to open the gate. Once you find the gate you're looking for, you'll come to realize that the tools you picked up earlier are not going to be enough to destroy the padlock. You will need to find a room somewhere in this place first. In there, you will find some acid. That, coupled with the hammer and chisel you found earlier, you will be able to escape this hellhole. Enjoy the exiting process. And now you find yourself in the entrance to the cistern. A nice change of pace from the claustrophobia-inducing dark hallways you just left. This place is nice and big, and there's natural light. You feel like you can breathe here at last. This is part of what makes Amnesia so great. Periods of great anguish followed by relief bring you back to your baseline, so you never get used to the jump scares and the oppressive ambiance and atmosphere. The aim here is to get into the sewers, but there are two major obstacles in the way. The water level in the cistern is way too high and needs to be drained. Secondly, even when you manage to do that, you will find that a type of poisonous fungi will not let you enter the sewers. Breathing the fungi fumes in for too long will kill you, so you need to inoculate yourself with a makeshift vaccine first. This is where you get to see a lot of corpses. You also get to see one in the labyrinth part of the game, so it's not too shocking, but there are many more of them here, and they look fresh. After finally getting into the sewers, more puzzles await. Because what is a horror game without a puzzle or two, am I right? Careful though of the new monster that will appear. Yes, you heard that right. Upon walking into one of the rooms, you will find the monster that has been haunting you before, dead, on the ground and split into many pieces, prompting the player to ask, if this thing can kill me, what the hell is killing this thing? Well, a new and improved monster is what can do that. This bad boy has a saw for an arm, metal rods sticking into it everywhere, and its face is somehow even uglier than the previous version. This one is also more clever and faster, it seems. At least that was my feeling playing the game. Any mistake will be punished by this monster. If you try to hide and even the smallest part of you is visible to it, or you make a sound of some sort, it will look for you, it will find you, and it will kill you. Curiously, the developers did not put any water monsters here, which is a missed opportunity if I ever saw one. I mean, just look at this. There's water literally everywhere. But anyway, at the end of the sewers, you will find a ladder and you'll be able to climb out of there. Finally, you enter the nave. Here you will find 4 doors, one of which you cannot open. A room with 2 levers that don't work, because of course they don't, a blocked off room, and a spiraling descending staircase. As you follow the trail of the descending staircase, you come upon a sight that's not too unfamiliar. Another corpse, a human in a sort of crucified position. His body is emaciated, his face is mangled, and suddenly... He moves his head to meet your eyes in what has got to be one of the most terrifying jump scares of the game, in my opinion. You will have come across other corpses at this point, but none of the others moved or talked to you, which only makes Agrippa's movement all the more startling as it's completely unexpected. So this guy is Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa. You'll see, although Agrippa has no lower jaw and his mouth seems to be familiarly destroyed, Exhibit A, he can speak through a contraption that seeps out a filthy green smoke. Much like Daniel, Agrippa was fascinated by the legends of orbs. Although unlike Daniel, he studied this about 300 years prior and did so before obtaining one. Once he did manage to find one, the shadows started to follow him. He was eventually caught, but spared for some reason, and for a while he did not dare speak to anyone about what happened. Eventually though, he did share what he had learned with a student of his, Johann Weyer, and together they somehow came into contact with Alexander. The 3 men would study the relic of the orb together. Alexander's motive seems to have always been to leave the human realm. You see, Alexander, as it turns out, is not a human at all. He is some sort of immortal being from another realm. He was banished from said realm, however, and he believes that the orbs are his one-way ticket back there so he can be returned to his home dimension. Johann Weyer ended up betraying Alexander and performed the final ritual to go to the other world himself, while Agrippa was too afraid to follow suit. For his betrayal, Alexander lost all trust in Agrippa, and so he trapped him in a dying husk of a body for eternity. Alexander would make the attempt at the final ritual himself, but ended up activating the orb way too soon and destroyed both the orb and his chances of going back home. Agrippa, now Alexander's prisoner, had no agency any longer, and credit where credit is due, Johann Weyer, his student, attempted to help Agrippa. He contacted Alexander, presumably from the other world, and he offered Alexander an exchange. Johann Weyer would provide a potion to Alexander that would free Agrippa from his curse. If the Baron then let Agrippa go unharmed, Weyer would help Alexander in returning home to the other world. At this point, however, Alexander simply could not trust Weyer or anyone else anymore. In the nave itself, you will discover the actual cells where prisoners were held. while constantly on the lookout for monsters of course, you discover that these prisoners that Alexander told you about were not simply being held but actually tortured in order to extract from them the vitae, or life force, that is only endogenously produced when the subject is undergoing extreme pain and panic. Alexander needs the vitae for the rituals. Back to the game. You have to find a way to make the previously discovered levers work, because of course you do, and in the cells themselves is where you finally start to find pieces of the orb. In total there are 6, only then will you have almost everything you need in order to finish the game. From the nave you'll be able to enter the chancel, which has to be one of the coolest looking places in the game. I mean, just look at it. It reminds me of one of these ginormous temples in Thailand and India or whatever. Here are some pictures for reference. Whoever designed this place in the game, hats off to you, sir. Or ma'am. In the chancel, you come to a sobering realization. You, Daniel, have actually come into contact with these prisoners. Aha, yes. It turns out it wasn't just Alexander that was performing torture rituals in order to extract vitae from them. Not only that, Alexander had made Daniel believe that these were evil people. People who committed crimes, horrible crimes, like abduction, larceny, murder, etc. This made the torture justifiable in Daniel's mind, which is problematic in its own right, but it turns out they were actually just innocent people that were abducted for their vitae. Alexander and Daniel would torture these prisoners, force feed them an amnesia potion so they forget that they were tortured, and then torture them again, all the while extracting every bit of vitae from them as they can. Daniel was just as much complicit in these torture sessions. When I first read this letter, I could not believe what I was reading. Not only that, but if you look at Agrippa's mouth and the monsters' mouths, it seems to me to be a clear hint that the monsters that have been following you this entire time are deceased prisoners looking for their captor and torturer. I could not find any confirmation of this online, but if you know of such a confirmation, please link it in the comments below. Or if you disagree, tell me what you think and why you think it. Anyway, it was you who was the actual monster this entire time. Not the scary looking beast. You. What a revelation. After finally finding all of the pieces of the orb, you will need to go to the chancel in order to get to the inner sanctum. The moment you step in, however, this happens. You wake up in a cell with the monster leaving the room. Evidently, this is where the first of 4 possible endings of the game can happen. You have 2 options at this point. Escape the cell somehow by solving some more puzzles, or, if you wait for too long, the meaty substance, also known as the shadow, will spread throughout the cell and kill you. Alexander in this case will be able to perform the final ritual and get back to his home dimension. If you make it out of the cell in time, you can go back to the chancel and sabotage a certain machine that is providing an electric barrier preventing you from going into the inner sanctum. Do this and put the pieces of the orb back together and you'll be granted passage. And after solving one more puzzle, finally face Alexander head to head. You will find him naked for some reason, and here you will learn a fighting mechanic for the very first time. Recall that you cannot fight any of the monsters in this game. Alexander, however, needs to be defeated in a boxing match. I don't understand why the developers chose to do this, but hey, I'm not judging. Okay, there's no boxing, I was kidding. You will find Alexander in the middle of the final ritual, and here the last 3 endings are possible. First, if you interrupt the ritual by pushing the pylons over, then you can kill Alexander. In this ending, Daniel survives and the shadow stops following him at this point. He is free. The second possibility is to do nothing and let Alexander go to the other world, in which case you'll die. The third possibility, however, is a bit different. There's a side quest in this game where you can actually save Agrippa. If you manage to gather all the ingredients necessary, you'll be able to give him a potion to free him from his prison. Cut off his head and take him with you to the inner sanctum. When the portal to the other world opens, you can throw Agrippa's head into it, saving him. In this scenario, Alexander dies and Daniel is killed by the shadow. In the end, however, just like in the Tin Henan tomb, in the darkness, Daniel sees faint blue shimmering lights and hears Agrippa's voice in the distance, asking Wire to save Daniel, telling him that he deserves better than what he got. Agrippa seemingly saves Daniel as a thank you for Daniel saving him from his eternal fate of suffering. So how about that, ladies and gentlemen, for a game walkthrough? Like and subscribe. Please. Right from the jump, the game puts you in an atmosphere that just feels suffocating and oppressive in a way that I simply have not felt before. And the fact that Daniel, much like you, doesn't know anything is just such a wonderful fresh twist to the game. Instead of feeling like the character is already fleshed out and you have a game of catch-up to do, you feel connected to the character in a very unique way. You're both clueless about where you are, both of you don't know why you're there, and both of you don't know how the hell you're supposed to get out of there. On a first playthrough, you also don't know what type of monsters to expect. Doors opening and closing on their own seems to indicate that ghosts or supernatural entities might be involved, but only later on do you realize that the monsters are very much physical and real in nature, which makes you kind of feel silly for being scared of doors opening by themselves. Much like in real life, you know it's probably just a draft, but you still get that knot in your stomach regardless. Not being able to fight the monsters also was a brilliant choice. Not that being able to fight back isn't a fun aspect to have in games, but it's a nice change of pace from something like Resident Evil. It makes you feel helpless. There's nothing you can do other than run and hide. The brilliance of what makes this game so great is really what you don't get to see. A lot of the time it's the player's imagination that is doing most of the work, something that Josh Strife Plays covers beautifully in his video about Amnesia, which was the inspiration for this one. So go check out his video, link will be in the description. I highly recommend it. I just like helping smaller creators, what can I say? I'm a nice guy like that. Like and subscribe. The writers also did an incredible job filling out each character's backstories. Even Alexander has a purpose, a motive, which is to return home. Yes, he's the bad guy, but at least you understand his motivation.
You hear that, Dan and Dave?
The graphics could maybe use an upgrade like The Witcher 3 did with the next-gen update. I would pay for that personally. But overall, this was one of the most fun games, in a morbid way, that I've ever played. Solving the puzzles really made me feel like I was being challenged mentally. Add to that the dynamic of the possibility of death at every turn, and the stakes are raised to a thrilling degree. Throughout the game, you feel this sense of constant dread that something is either behind you, or in front of you, or next to you, or behind the door, or you get the point. So this game really achieved its purpose in a way that I fear is very difficult to recreate without feeling like an Amnesia ripoff. It also feels like it might have ruined horror games for me, just like The Witcher 3 has ruined RPGs for me. But who knows, maybe I'm wrong. If you think you have a great game suggestion for me to play, put it in the comments below. In a sense, I wish I could replay the game for the very first time. I guess I wish I could have Amnesia. But like all things, nothing is perfect. So there are a couple of things I would have done otherwise in this game. First off, Daniel never eats or drinks anything. Now I don't know how long he's supposed to be in there, so maybe it's completely within the realm of possibility and I'm just being nitpicky, but I wouldn't mind actually adding an element of hunger, starvation and dehydration to the game. I think that would be really cool. Maybe add a difficulty level where that is required. Secondly, and this is my biggest gripe with the game, the ending. Killing Alexander was way too easy. The whole game has been building up to the point where you're going to reach the inner sanctum and kill Alexander. And in the end, just pushing over a couple of pylons just felt anticlimactic. I would have much rather preferred something like this. A cutscene where the portal to the other dimension opens. Both Daniel and Alexander are sucked into it, but both cannot pass through to the other realm. It's only one or the other. Johann Weyer, on the other side, is alerted to Alexander's attempt at returning home, but he's bitter with him because he had trapped his professor, Agrippa. So Weyer tries to sabotage the journey from the human world to the other dimension. Before going through with it, he sees that there's someone else in the portal too, Daniel. And not only that, he has Agrippa's head with him, and he can see that Agrippa must have been given the potion that Alexander refused to give him by Daniel. Maybe add a contingency here, so if you tried to help Agrippa, this ending is triggered, and if you didn't, then Alexander and you both die. So immediately, Weyer knows that Daniel is a good guy, or at the very least, he doesn't want him to die, since that would mean Agrippa's fate would also be sealed. Weyer opts not to harm Daniel. Daniel has been helpful to his professor and chooses to try and save him and Agrippa. So Weyer is stuck between a rock and a hard place. How to kill Alexander and save Daniel? Well, this game has had puzzles from the beginning, so why not end it with one? Weyer chooses to enchant the portal with a puzzle. The one to solve it first gets to make it out alive and go to the world of their choosing. The other one dies. He adds information to the puzzle, which only Agrippa knows about. Daniel and Agrippa put their heads together. Get it? Put their heads together. And with the last piece of information from Agrippa, you are able to solve the puzzle and escape to the other world. Wire revives Agrippa, sends Daniel home, and the shadow stops following Daniel. The end. Or something like that, I don't know. Something to make defeating Alexander a bit more challenging and fun. Overall, this is still a wonderful game and is still definitely worth playing in 2023. It's a 9 out of 10 from me. So does the game deserve all the love and awards it has won over the last 13 years? Obviously yes.
Like and subscribe, for God's sake!